had so much influence on the creation of Jewish art. One day I talked to the late Rabbi Koch about this prohibition. I asked him whether it was true that somewhere in our holy commentaries there's a passage which says that under certain conditions sculpture is allowed to be done by Jews. So the rabbi knitted his brows. Let me see, he was saying to himself. A few moments later he brought down huge Gemara from his shelves. He piled them up on the table. He opened up one after another, moving his delicate fingers along the lines of the Holy Script as he read. This went on for half an hour. He looked like a hunter on the trail, a hunter after truth and knowledge. Why he didn't just Google it, I'm not sure. At last, he stood up triumphantly. Here it is, he said. Now listen to what our sages say about your question. I don't remember the exact wording he quoted, but it was something like this. Our sages say, he read out, that it is allowed for Jews to make images if those are done imperfectly and maimed. This made me laugh. Why are you laughing, he asked. In that case, I replied, I am sure my sculptures are kosher. Why, he asked, because my work is far from perfect. Now it was his turn to laugh. He was all kindness. And we talked about art, and then he told me the story. So it's in this context, when they're talking about art being permitted in 3 dimensions about human beings, if it shows human beings not as perfect, but imperfect, that's when this concept, this discussion of Rembrandt's light emerged. And I think this is very significant, because this really is a halacha, that there are huge Jewish concerns about owning 3-dimensional depictions of human beings, and that is linked to the fact that to own 3-dimensional representation of human beings is to some way to divinize them, because those human beings stay and last forever. It seems to show them perfectly without age. My sister, when she was a little girl, had one of those life-size dolls that was perfect, that looked like an actual human being. And my father actually covered up one of the ears to make it. People are like, what kind of house were you raised in, right? You can read it all about it in my Tello autobiography, Growing Up Soloveitchik. Okay? Because it was assumed that if you had a large depiction of a life-size figure, it could not actually be perfect. Now, why is that significant? The answer is that for us, Judaism believes that the essential aspect of human beings lie in their very humanity. And part and parcel of their humanity, of course, is their fallibility and their mortality. That is an essential part of who we are. And the great concern, especially about pagan art, especially about Greek art for Judaism, is the usage of art to divinize human beings, rather than show human beings as they truly are, as imperfect rather than perfect. And when you actually embrace the imperfections of human beings, then you actually reveal how special they are. Man must not be divinized. And the challenge of a Jewish art, then, is to resist the pagan temptation of idolatry and to portray a truly human beauty, which is flawed, imperfect, and therefore very beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no one more honest about the mortality and imperfections of human beings than Rembrandt himself. We know that because we know how Rembrandt depicted himself. Rembrandt was the first taker of selfies. But unlike today's selfies, where you have filters and you can edit it to make sure that you are looked in the most flattering way possible, Rembrandt, in brutal honesty, depicts how he looks, and you will see many of these, from when he was a young man to all the ravages of old age and what that did to his life. The most celebrated self-portraits today are ones such as the one you see in the last page of the handout. The self-portrait of Rembrandt is an old man, bereft of his house, which has been claimed by the bank because he's gone bankrupt, with his wife dead, with his second wife dead, with his son dead, and showing the ravages of old age and yet holding his painter's stick at the same time, as if he was royalty. He does not touch up his face, he does not take away his wrinkles, he shows himself as he is. And that, of course, is exactly what Rembrandt does to all of the other people that he paints, to Jews and to non-Jews. Unlike Rubens, he does not only paint beautiful people, he does not take people and divinize them and treat them in classical fashion. That is not what Rembrandt does. What Rembrandt does is something very different. Rembrandt shows people as they are. And that is perhaps what Rav Kook was talking about. Not just that Rembrandt did this for Jews or brought Judaism into his paintings, but that he allowed the light of God, which is part of every Tselem Elokim, every human being created in the image of God, to come forth. It was Rabbi Sachs who suggested that Rav Kook's reference to the luminance of creation in Rembrandt's paintings referred to the light Rembrandt saw in the faces of ordinary people without any attempt to beautify them. His work lets us see the transcendental quality of the human, the only thing in the universe on which God sets his image. When you see the faces that Rembrandt has painted, think about this. As Simon Schama said, that no painter before or after Rembrandt, quote, ever mapped physiognomy and the work that merciless time makes of it with quite the same avid and detailed relish. Nothing escapes his brush. The droop of an octogenarian eyelid, the tightness of hair pulled back into a linen cap, the slight oiliness of a prosperous proboscis, prominent in many Jewish paintings, the overlapping folds of a jowl, or the wateriness of the eye's vitreous membranes. Other artists, Shama says, in painting people, might have hesitated to make so much of the crow's foot or the bulbous nose. The cosmetically averse Rembrandt, however, saw these not as compromising the moral nobility of his sitters, but as describing it. In his sympathetic, this is the money quote, in Rembrandt's sympathetic eyes, there were no grotesques. That's Rembrandt. There were no grotesques. And this is the light, perhaps, that shines from Rembrandt's portraits. And if Judaism is both open to art but also uneasy because of its ability to truly represent a person's frail, fallible humanity, then Rembrandt is the artist for the Jews. Without focusing in any way on Judaism, the art historian E.H. Gombrich picks out a feature of Rembrandt that is exactly what Judaism seeks in artistic expression. He says the following when he talks about why Rembrandt is special. We have seen other portraits, he writes, by great masters, which are memorable for the way they sum up a person's character and role. But even the greatest of them may remind us of characters in fiction or actors on the stage. They are convincing and impressive, but we sense that they can only represent one side of a complex human being. And then he writes, not even the Mona Lisa can always have smiles. But in Rembrandt's great portraits, we feel face to face with real people. We sense their warmth, their need for sympathy, and also their loneliness and their suffering. Those keen and steady eyes that we know so well from Rembrandt's self-portraits must have been able to look straight into the human hearts. And that's what's special about Rembrandt, his depictions of human beings, but also in his depictions of all the characters of Tanakh that we know and love. As we'll see throughout this week, Rembrandt's David is not Michelangelo's muscled Adonis, a Greek god, who's not even circumcised, which is a little odd because the insult David has for Goliath in that scene is that he's an Orel. Rather, we see him as an etching, as a father pleading with God for the life of his child. We see him in a painting, which is in the Hermitage today, as embracing Avshalom, the son who killed his elder brother, with David torn between anger at his murderous act and love for the son in his arms. As we saw in Berlin, his Moses is not Michelangelo's otherworldly prophet with horns of light. He is an aging, balding man who, out of love and devotion to the people that failed him, he has carved enormous second set of stone tablets. And so it's not too much to say, ladies and gentlemen, that at the heart of this trip is the notion that in Rembrandt's paintings, Jews who have read of these beloved biblical characters for years are now finally able to see them for the first time. Not because Rembrandt knows with any certainty how they actually looked, but because he has a true sense of their souls, and with several colors on a canvas, he is able to bring it to life for us. And how does he do this? What lends him the ability to see so deeply into the very soul of man, and then to bring that immaterial spirit to life on a physical canvas? Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I cannot say with confidence what gave Rembrandt this insight and this miraculous ability. But I know that one very great rabbi in England in the 19-teens was convinced that what allowed him to do this was nothing less than the light that was lent to him by God himself. Thank you very much for joining me on this journey.